I'm Carla Simmons. I'm 28 years old, and for nearly 5 years I've worked at a bakery that stays open all night in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of Louisville, Kentucky. I got used to leaving late, walking alone with my headphones in and my keys clenched between my fingers as makeshift protection. That routine never scared me. If anything, it made me feel empowered. Until one ordinary night, everything changed. And it wasn't because of something I saw, it was because something saw me. It was a Friday, just before midnight, and like always, the bus dropped me off at the final stop, right in front of an empty plaza. The driver gave me a quick, tired nod and drove away. The only sound I could hear was my own footsteps crunching dry leaves. That's when I noticed it. Sitting on the swing in the small park under a flickering street lamp was someone. From a distance, just a vague silhouette. But as the light trembled, it revealed what I didn't want to see. A man, dressed as a clown. Not the kind you see at kids' parties. This one had smeared makeup, messy synthetic hair, and worn-out clothes like he had stepped out of a forgotten carnival. He didn't move, just swayed slowly on the swing, completely silent. I froze for a few seconds. My heart started pounding harder. I quickened my pace, crossed the street, and avoided looking back. I didn't want to run. I didn't want to do anything that might trigger a reaction. That night, sleep didn't come easily. Not because of what had happened, but because of what could have. I kept trying to convince myself it was just someone in costume, a prankster, someone bored looking for attention. But deep inside, something didn't feel right. I had ignored him, but I didn't feel like he had ignored me. And that was just the beginning. I'm not someone who shares personal stories online, but there's something about this that won't let me stay silent. Maybe because I still can't fully grasp what I lived through. Maybe because, like me, you walk alone at night thinking nothing bad will ever happen. And it's exactly in that moment, when you stop suspecting, that something finds you. If you're drawn to stories like this, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell, and tell us in the comments about your most unforgettable paranormal experience. Because what I'm about to share never really ended. The next day, I tried to shake it off. I got up like always, went to work, smiled at customers, pretended nothing had happened. I convinced myself it had just been a guy in a costume, maybe a bet, maybe a joke. But that night, I took the same bus, got off at the same stop, and there he was again. Not in the park this time. He was standing beside the closed pharmacy right across the street that leads to my house. He wasn't doing anything. He didn't move. But his stance had changed. It was tighter, more deliberate. He held something in his hand, a balloon, sagging, almost deflated, like it had been forgotten. What made my blood run cold wasn't seeing him. It was the realization that he was waiting for me. That's how it felt, like he already knew I'd be passing by. I crossed the street without looking at him, pretended I was on the phone, walked faster, took a side street to avoid getting too close. I could feel eyes on me, even if I didn't hear any steps behind me. When I reached my gate, my heart was still racing. I scanned the street, nothing. But as I climbed the steps and turned the key in the lock, something made me look back. Tied to the gate was a balloon, not the same one. This was purple, half inflated, tied with a thin wire. I stood there, staring, not touching it. There was no breeze. It didn't move, just hung there like a message, like someone wanted to say, "I know where you live." I went inside without turning back, locked every window, slid the chain on the door. I didn't turn on the TV. I lay in bed with the hallway lights on. That night, sleep never really came, not because of what had happened, but because of what might still happen. The next morning, the balloon was gone. I thought about telling someone, but how do you explain something like that without sounding paranoid? My co-workers were used to my quiet nature, but even they would look at me sideways if I said a clown was following me. So I kept it to myself. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just a strange coincidence. It was a sequence, a pattern beginning to repeat itself. Something was tracing my steps. Something had chosen me. And when something chooses you, it doesn't matter if you lock your doors or pretend not to see. It won't stop just because you want it to. That whole day, I felt a weight in my chest. I kept checking my phone, half expecting some local news about a creepy guy in costume lurking around the neighborhood. But nothing. Silence. Like what I was living only existed for me. That same Monday after my shift, I did something I had promised I wouldn't. I went to the nearest police station in a town called Middletown. I went alone, still in my bakery uniform, my eyes red from not sleeping. I told everything to an officer who didn't take his eyes off his screen the entire time. When I finished, he asked, with a mocking tone, if I was sure I hadn't just seen a street performer or some bum in costume looking for attention. I showed him a photo of the balloon tied to my gate. He said they couldn't do anything unless there was a direct threat or property damage. If he shows up again and does something, call us, he said. As if that helped. I walked home filled with anger and helplessness. I felt completely alone, not just physically but emotionally, like I couldn't rely on anyone anymore. That night I didn't go to work. I called the bakery and said I wasn't feeling well. It wasn't a lie. I'd ordered a cheap security camera online, the kind you can stick above your door. I didn't know if it would help, but I had to feel like I was doing something. While installing it, every noise made me flinch. Every shadow made me shiver. I took a quick shower, barely touched my dinner, and went straight to bed. But sleeping didn't happen. At exactly 3:16 a.m., I woke up with my heart pounding as if I'd been yanked out of a nightmare. I didn't know why. I got up, walked to the living room, checked the door, locked everything in place. But when I pulled the curtain aside to peek outside, a chill shot through my stomach. On the sidewalk in front of my house, there were footprints. Not normal ones. They were round, misshapen, as if left by oversized shoes. Clown shoes. And the ground had been dry for days. I shut the curtain with trembling hands, sat on the couch, knees pulled to my chest. That night, I never went back to sleep. I didn't eat the next day. Just watched the clock, counting the hours until night fell again, wishing for the first time that I'd never have to leave the house again. First thing when I woke up, I checked the camera footage. I had left the app running on my phone all night, though I hadn't dared to watch it live. Part of me hoped there'd be nothing. Another part already knew what I'd find. I fast-forwarded to just after 2 a.m. The angle showed the gate, a slice of sidewalk, and the metal fence. Everything was still, nothing moved, just silence. And then, there he was, exactly 2:47 a.m. A figure appeared from the edge of the frame. He moved slowly, taking long strides, his back hunched, like he was carrying something heavy. He wore the same costume I already knew, but this time I noticed a new detail. A plastic yellow flower stitched to his chest, one of those old gag props from circus acts. The clown stopped in front of my house. He didn't knock, didn't move, just stood there watching for nearly 8 minutes. My whole body shook as I held the phone. Breathing hurt. At one point the video froze for less than 2 seconds, and when it resumed, he was gone. I didn't see him walk away. I heard nothing. He had just vanished from the frame, like he had melted into the dark. I sat at the edge of my bed, staring at the last frame on the screen. I rewound the footage. I saw him again. I paused the exact moment his face came into view. I zoomed in. The paint was cracked. The red lips were painted grotesquely. His eyes, empty. No expression. Not even the exaggerated smile common in cheap costumes. Just a hollow face, as if someone had pulled the skin over a character that had died a long time ago. I thought about saving the video, sharing it, sending it to the police or someone else. But I didn't. I deleted it. I erased the file as if doing so could wipe away what I had seen, as if that would convince me nothing had ever happened. I showered without closing my eyes. That night, I slept fully dressed, and for the first time since all of this began, I locked my bedroom door. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was anticipation. A certainty that the worst hadn't happened yet, that whatever this man wanted, he hadn't gotten it, and I no longer knew if I was being watched or chosen. For 3 days, everything stayed quiet. No one rang the bell. No new balloon appeared on the gate. I started to wonder if maybe the video had marked the end. Maybe he understood that I didn't want to see him anymore. But part of me didn't buy it. That calm didn't feel like relief. It felt like the pause before the next blow. One afternoon, coming back from the corner store, my neighbor Missy stopped me in front of her gate. She'd always been nice, though we didn't talk much. This time her face was different, puzzled. She said she'd seen a strange man walking along Sycamore Street the night before, the same street I lived on. I asked what he looked like. She shrugged and said he was dressed like a clown, but not a party one, you know. More like an old, dirty costume. Walked slow, had something in his hand. I think it was a balloon. My body tensed. I asked if she saw his face. She said no, that he wore some kind of mask. I tried not to react, just thanked her and kept walking. But inside, my heart was pounding. It wasn't just me. She had seen him too. Someone else had noticed. That should have made me feel less crazy. But it scared me more, because if others could see him, then he was real. And if he was real, he was closer than I wanted to admit. That night, I couldn't sleep. I spent hours reading online forums, searching social media threads, comments, anything that mentioned someone like him. I found several accounts from women in nearby areas: Fern Creek, St. Matthews, even Jeffersontown, all describing something similar. A man in a clown costume showing up on quiet streets, always at night. One woman wrote that her sister had gone missing 5 months ago after seeing a guy with a painted face on her way to work. She was never found. I kept reading until the sun came up. I didn't answer anyone that day. I didn't go to work. I stayed home, curtains drawn, phone silenced, and a new feeling I couldn't quite name. It wasn't fear, it was resignation. I had convinced myself he wasn't just following me, he had chosen me, like the others, like that girl who never came back. And the worst part, he didn't even have to break in to hurt me. Just knowing he was out there somewhere waiting was enough. The sense that something was coming wasn't a feeling anymore. It was fact. I barely slept, barely ate, kept the windows locked all day, but nothing could have prepared me for that night. I woke up at 2:54 a.m. with a jolt. No loud noises, no screaming, just a faint electric hum I couldn't place. I got up and noticed a flickering light coming from the living room. I figured I'd left something on, so I walked out. The TV was on, not on a channel, just static, a black screen with white noise. The remote was on the floor, as if someone had thrown it. I froze. There was no way it turned on by itself. No timers, no loose cords. I turned it off with shaking hands, and that's when I saw it. The couch cushion was sunken, as if someone had been sitting there. I walked over slowly, like silence might protect me. Nothing, no forced entry. The windows were closed, the doors locked, but everything in me screamed someone had been here. I went to the kitchen, turned on the light. The air was heavy, like someone had smoked inside without opening a window. And in the middle of the floor, where the fridge's shadow met the tables, something gleamed. A coin. Not just any coin. One of those used in magic tricks. Big, golden, too shiny to belong on a kitchen floor. I knelt to pick it up and felt a jab in my stomach. The metal was freezing, like it had just come out of ice. I placed it on the table, disgusted. Then I smelled it. That strange, sweet scent, like cotton candy, but spoiled. A sickly, artificial aroma that didn't belong. I searched every corner of the house that night, found nothing else. But I knew that didn't mean things were fine. What had happened was worse than any sighting. No footprints, no sounds, no signs of violence. He'd come in, without breaking anything. I called 911. 2 officers came. They checked the house with flashlights, asked basic questions, found no evidence of entry. One of them suggested I might have fallen asleep with the TV on and gotten confused. The younger one gave me a card for a counseling center. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't try to convince them. That night, I slept on the bedroom floor with a kitchen knife under my pillow and the lights on. I didn't close my eyes. I couldn't. I just listened, waited, because now he wasn't outside. He didn't need to knock anymore, and that was the scariest thing of all. I couldn't take it anymore. The next day, I quit. I didn't explain, just said it was personal. Packed the essentials, clothes, documents, my laptop, turned off the security camera but didn't bother removing it. I didn't say goodbye to anyone, didn't tell the neighbors. I just got in my car and drove south to Santa Lucia Springs, where my parents lived. When I arrived, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Relief. Their house was surrounded by trees with a sturdy gate, neighbors who knew each other, and dogs that barked all night. I felt safe again. I started sleeping, eating without nausea, watching TV without jumping at every sound. I began to believe maybe it had been a breakdown, that maybe everything I'd gone through had been stress. That version was easier to live with. 5 days passed. On the 6th afternoon, while helping my mom brew a pot of coffee in the kitchen, she paused and frowned, looking out the front window. "Do you know the man in the costume standing by the gate?" The words knocked the breath from my chest. I turned slowly. I didn't need to see to know. "What kind of costume?" I asked. "I don't know. Like an old clown." "Is he with you?" I felt everything inside me freeze. I set the cup down. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. I went to my room, closed the door, and sat on the bed. It doesn't matter how far you go. It doesn't matter how many miles you put between you and it. When something or someone chooses you, it's not about distance. It's about connection. And I had already made mine, not when I saw him the first time, not even when I filmed him. It was the night I spoke, the night I didn't ignore him. That was the mistake. And now, even if the town was safer, even if the streets were full of light, even if everyone believed me, he wasn't out there anymore. He was here. That night, I didn't eat. I didn't talk to anyone. I locked myself in the room I'd grown up in, the walls still covered in faded posters and photos that no longer felt like mine. I lay down fully dressed, and for the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to think clearly. When had it really started? I went back through every night, every place, every silence, and then I remembered. It was that first time, outside the pharmacy. He didn't speak, just stared. But I, out of reflex, out of politeness, said, "Good evening," barely audible, barely a whisper. I didn't even think about it. And that was it, because it wasn't what he did. It was what I allowed. Naming him, even indirectly, had opened a door, acknowledging his presence. And once you acknowledge something, it stays. After that, everything changed. I started noticing him closer, more often. And whenever someone asked what was wrong, I felt that saying it out loud would bring it back again. That telling the story was like summoning it. I approached the mirror on the closet, an old one, framed in wood. I hadn't looked at my reflection in days. I'd been avoiding mirrors, but that night I needed to see myself. And something was off. My reflection was there, yes, but when I moved my hand, there was a delay. Just a split second, as if the image hesitated to follow me. I froze, watched, waited. My breathing grew heavier. The air was thick. I looked away and quietly left the room. I didn't sleep, didn't turn on any lights. I sat on the stairs, wrapped in a blanket, and waited for morning. The next day, my mother asked if I was okay. I said yes. She didn't press, but I saw her glance at the dark circles under my eyes. She asked if she should call someone. No one could help, because this wasn't a person, it wasn't a madman, it wasn't a crime you could report. It was something else, Something that activates with just a word, a glance, a moment of carelessness. And that's what I did. I invited him in. By then, I had stopped searching for explanations. I was moving purely by instinct. I slept little, spoke even less. I avoided mirrors, elevators, windows without curtains. My parents tried not to push me. They said I was tired, that I needed time. I just nodded. They couldn't understand. I didn't want them to. One early morning, exactly at 3:33, I opened my eyes without knowing why. No sounds, no lights, just that feeling. That one that tells you someone's there before you see them. I sat up in bed. The air was freezing even though it wasn't cold. I pulled a sweatshirt over my pajamas and walked out of the room without turning on the light. The hallway in my parents' house is long, with pale cream walls and a single bulb at the far end that always flickers. And that's where I saw it, under that trembling light. It wasn't him, but it was something of him. A mark. A small black handprint smudged on the wall, as if stamped there with ash. It wasn't paint, it wasn't a joke. It looked burned in, dark, scorched, clinging to the surface. I stepped closer, each movement feeling heavier than the last. The air grew thick, suffocating, like the inside of a room sealed off for years. The light overhead flickered, struggling to stay on. And then I saw the other thing. Next to the print, scratched into the wall with the same material, were 3 crooked letters, JN. I didn't know what they meant, but I'd seen them before, on the balloon, on the old token. In dreams I no longer fully remembered. A shiver raced down my spine. I reached out to touch it, but stopped. Something held me back. Not physically, something inside me. I stood there, staring at that wall for who knows how long. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't go back to my room. I just knew that in that instant, everything had shifted. Until then, it had all been shadows, glimpses, a presence. But that mark, it was real. It was proof, a declaration. He wasn't waiting outside anymore. He didn't need to be let in, because he was already here. And somehow, I wasn't entirely here anymore either. I can't explain the feeling, like part of me had been left behind, hung on a rusted lamppost, abandoned on a quiet sidewalk beneath a dead streetlight. Something that never returned with me. Something that's still out there, where it all began. Eventually, I moved out on my own again. Not because I felt ready, but because my parents started to change too. They never said it out loud, but I saw it in their eyes. They slept poorly, closed the windows before sunset. My mom began praying silently. My dad avoided the hallway. I realized I had to leave before something found them too. I moved to a modest apartment in the outskirts of Santa Lucia Heights. No elevators, no noisy neighbors. I chose the place carefully. No large mirrors, no exposed windows, no long hallways. Anything that might feel like an invitation, I eliminated. I started working in a small grocery store, afternoon shifts, nothing too demanding, nothing that would require me to be out at night. I kept to myself, didn't talk to strangers, didn't respond when someone stared at me for no reason, and for a while, it worked. I didn't wake up at 3:33 anymore. No coins appeared, no strange noises in the dark. I walked around my apartment with headphones on, even when it was silent, just to drown out the quiet, just to avoid the sound I feared the most. A soft laugh, faint, broken, like an old toy winding down, until it happened. 2 weeks ago, I was sent to deliver an order to a medical office in a commercial building on the north side of town. It was still early. The stairs were under maintenance, so I pressed the elevator button without thinking. The doors opened immediately, and there they were, a pair of small, worn, dirty shoes, untied laces, sitting in the center of the elevator floor. I didn't see anyone else. No reflection, no shadow. But the air inside the elevator was heavy. I stepped back without a sound. The doors closed with a dull click, I never went back in. Since then, I take the stairs, no matter how many floors. I walk fast, eyes down. I double lock the door even if I'm just taking out the trash. I shower with the door open. I turn off the lights one by one, always in the same order, as if those tiny rituals could keep him away. But I know they don't work. I'm not escaping. I'm just delaying. And if one day something like this happens to you, if you ever see a silent child standing still inside an empty elevator, don't speak to him. Don't look at him. And above all, never meet his eyes, because once you do, he sees you too, and he will never stop watching. Never.